Welcome to another episode of Talks with Tech Leaders. Today I'm pleased to be joined by a young star in Teesside, and as always I love to get guests from Teesside on this podcast, fresh of receiving 2 awards from the Tees Tech Talent Awards as well. So thank you for joining me today, Peter.
No, it's good to be here.
And would you mind just giving a bit of an intro to yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a dev at heart. I've been in the Teesside tech scene for well over 10 years now, which is crazy when I think about it, and just love to get involved in stuff like this, whether it's supporting businesses, whether it's just getting out and talking to people, trying to be a bit of a dev who can hold a conversation, or I'm certainly working towards it.
Yeah, great. So I just wanted to speak to you about some of the work that you're currently doing. So you've started your own company recently called Embeddable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we launched Embeddable. I'm getting in the habit of saying we now. We had our first new starter at the beginning of June. We launched in May last year, been working with businesses around Teesside to support them through understanding their ideas and bringing those to market. We've now just about started to expand to working with clients outside of the Tees Valley. So we've got a couple of clients spread across the UK now as well.
Oh, great. So what would you say that Embeddable does?
So we're a blend of software consultancy or tech consultancy and that product development if we're the right partner for it. We really specialise in getting in as soon as you've had that light bulb moment or you've found a problem. Our best time to come and work with you is as soon as you've identified it, because we'll help you take the blinders off. We'll also help you get the full picture before you go down the rabbit hole of things that you could explore or things you could try. We'll help you build out what that strategy looks like. We'll go through discovery of understanding what the problem is or what the idea is. We'll put that into technical scoping and give you kind of the blueprint for taking that forward and deciding whether that's feasible before you've invested hundreds of hours or thousands of pounds in deciding whether it's something that's worthwhile or not. We help you make that decision as soon as possible. And then if it's within our forte in terms of tech stacks, and we're not kind of going to force projects that don't work for us. If it fits within our remit, we'll help you through product development, or knowing some of the great agencies and businesses on Teesside, we'll refer you to someone else who can support you with that product development and bringing it into market.
Great. Where did the idea come from to start Embeddable?
I've always loved the whole reason that I became a dev was problem solving and wanting to see the impact that tech could make on a problem or how it can help bring an idea to life. So that's where Embeddable was very much a personal mission of wanting to understand people's problems and help them solve it. My North Star, my gratification is helping see other people do well and knowing that I've been able to play a part in that. So being able to do that as a business and actually understand their problems, help get them excited about their ideas and how that could really change their business or introduce something new to their sector, and playing a part in bringing that to market and seeing whether that generates revenue, whether it saves time. I love seeing people do well and knowing that we've been able to play a small part in it.
Yeah, great. No, that sounds brilliant. So as part of your service, then, do you offer services like a fractional CTO? Is that right?
Yeah, so generally what we tend to do with anyone who's got a new idea or they've identified a problem, it's where the consultancy approach comes in first. Rather than a business overcommitting to what they need, we'll initially sit down on like an ad hoc per hour basis, help you understand the problem or explore the idea a little bit more and make sure, like I say, it's feasible. Make sure that it's something that you can support financially. Make sure that it's capable technically, that it's something that can actually be built. There are still ideas in this day and age that can't be solved through tech. They are few and far between, but they are still out there. So we help you make that informed decision as early as possible. Depending on what the kind of business looks like or what the concept is, we'll either work with them from a development perspective or come on more as their fractional CTO, where essentially they can delegate any technical questions, any technical requirements for their business onto us. And the reason that we're called Embeddable is we embed our expertise into your business. We work with a small pot of businesses on a greater scale. We don't work with as many businesses as possible. And again, one of the things that we set out to do when we set up was, if we feel like we're taking on clients because we need to, or we're picking a client purely because it pays the most versus it's got the most ambition or the biggest idea, then we've failed. And that's where the fractional CTO comes in. It's an accessible role for businesses that aren't quite in need of a full-time CTO yet, or have the ambition of taking on a full-time CTO but want to kind of see what that role looks like within their business, and they can work with us on a short-term or mid to long-term basis.
Yeah, I remember we were having a chat a couple of weeks ago. You mentioned that you can even support companies when they start off, they may not be technical themselves, so they may not have a lot of experience in coding and development, anything, but they've got an idea and they want to test that idea or see if if that idea's got legs. So for them as well, is it worth somebody that's got an idea like that to reach out to yourselves and explore what they can do with software or an idea in tech?
Yeah, absolutely. There's two kind of main schools of thought when it comes to whether it's starting a business or solving a problem. There's people who'll come at it from the tech angle, very technically capable, and then get to understand the industry and the problem. But some of the better products come from people who are in that arena and have faced that problem head on, and have then actually decided, right, there might be a tech way to work around this, or there might be a tech way to make this more efficient. And that's an ideal place to approach it from, because you're coming with the domain knowledge in that you understand the industry, you understand kind of the problem because, again, you've tackled it. So you know what the solution looks like, or you'll be able to much more quicker identify whether the solution that we build actually really does solve the problem, or if it solves it to the scale that you need it to, for it to be able to grow anything beyond kind of putting a plaster over a crack in a wall. So we actively support those businesses that are domain-led rather than tech-led, and that's kind of where our real value comes in, because they can give us all of the information through discovery, and we can write the scope for them and kind of plan what this tech product looks like. But straight away, as soon as it goes into any form of development, they'll really quickly see whether it does start to solve the problem, and we can either play on that and expand it further, or we can really quickly say, right, okay, this isn't going to plan as expected. This isn't a product that we're going to pursue, and you don't need to invest more money into it.
Yeah, great. I've noticed the term like fractional a lot, sort of in the past 12 months, I'd say. I think it's got a lot more prominence. So I appreciate for yourself, there's obviously, it's quite specific in CTOs, but we see like fractional CFOs now, fractional recruiters. So in your line of work, how would you say a fractional CTO can help a company, or what are their usual responsibilities?
The main trade-off of being a fractional, it's interchangeable with accessible. The whole purpose of a fractional is being able to get that very high level of expertise and experience at a fraction of the cost, because you get a fraction of the time as well. So it's much more accessible to those individuals just starting a business, or those startups that are just looking at scaling. And essentially it gives you the confidence that for whether it's a set hour per week, set hours per month, you've got that expertise in your corner you can either offload a lot of the technical requirements to, or know that you've got that person that you can sound off, and they'll be able to give you the insight and the input that you need. Especially say if you're a business that's really early on in development but looking to do a seed round, or you've gone a little bit further on and looking to do a Series A, and you've bootstrapped your business this far, a fractional CTO can come in on a negotiable rate or a negotiable amount of time per month and give you all of the insight that you need. We'll support you in that product development of getting it seed ready. And then once you've gone through seed or Series A, you're probably in a much better position to take on a CTO full time. The average salary last time I did the research was 140k a year for a CTO, and that's outside of London, which is so far out of reach for, if you look at the vast majority of businesses, not even just in the Tees Valley, but nationwide. If you're outside of a major city, there aren't many roles that pay 140k, and there aren't many businesses that can put that level of budget into a single role. It'd be better invested in 2-3 devs to take the product forward. And then at that point, you're looking at sort of like the CEO who's de facto becoming a product manager and CTO without all of the tech knowledge there. So it means that the output isn't as good as it could be.
Yeah, great. So I like the term accessible. I think that works really well with that in describing it. And as you mentioned, there is a high cost to bringing that sort of C-level board in at the early stages. So having options out there where, certain amount of time, certain amount of projects, but you can get all the processes in place, and when you're ready to hire, it's a really interesting take, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And having the benefit of that fractional come in, like you've touched on there, they've came from that experience of building teams and products before. They can put in whole new policies and procedures and strategies that you haven't even necessarily considered. If you're a business that hasn't hired for tech before, or you've been building this tech product on the side and you've not really considered recruitment, you've maybe not considered like your process to bring in devs on board, what that onboarding process looks like, how you can make sure that when a dev comes in, how are you nurturing them over the first 3 to 6 months to make sure they've got everything they need from you to be able to pick up the product? But how can you make sure that you're giving them everything that they need, and they've got everything, they feel supported in that role? They can't just come in and take things over immediately as much as everyone would like to. There's got to be that onboarding and ongoing nurturing, whether that's putting one-to-ones in place, that's managing kind of what their role progresses like. even if you recruit a junior, they've got aspirations. Like, you want to be able to support and incubate them for as long as you can. The only thing harder than recruiting for a new role is recruiting to replace, because you've got to counterbalance that against the talent that you're losing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's great to have all those processes in place. Like you said, if they can lean on someone like yourself to bring those processes in place, you've got a lot of experience. Obviously, we'll touch back on sort of your career as well, so they can really reach into that. But not only for developers, essentially once they want to get to a stage where they need a CTO, they'll have a lot of things in place. So it's just like an easier sell, I guess, to potential CTOs or potential, even junior level developers. Like you said, they have aspirations. They want to see a career path. They want to see progression. They want to see that the product they're working on, has potential to grow, and they can grow within a company as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And a fractional CTO is a very serious show of intent at a more accessible cost. If you speak to a developer and you just enter the recruitment market, where we don't have a CTO on board just yet, but we're working with a fractional to input all of the procedures and the policies, support you through onboarding, with the long-term plan of having that full-time CTO in situ, who not only manages the dev team, because the CTO is doing a lot more than that, but part of their core responsibility will be making sure that the product is developed, that there's security in mind, that they're very experienced from a tech perspective. We've got a fractional who's external to the business currently, putting all of the procedures in place. But as the business grows, which hopefully every dev or every tech role that comes on board can play a part in, our long-term plan is to have that full-time CTO in.
Yeah. What would you say success would look like to you when it comes to doing, like a project for some of your clients? What would be like a good either exit point for you, or a good point where you can continue to support on?
The ideal exit for us is the business grows to a point where they don't need us because they've taken on a CTO full time. When I kind of wrote Embeddable down on the back of a fag packet, for lack of a better term, the idea was that we can support and incubate businesses for around 2 years. If after 2 years of building a product and introducing it to the market and hopefully supporting them through growth, whether that's through investment, whether they bootstrap, if after 2 years they're still at that point where they need a fractional, they're either not growing at the trajectory they initially set out to, or they've stagnated, and at which point that's fine for certain businesses. They want to grow to a certain point. 2 years is kind of the inflection point for us, because we're essentially outsourced support as much as we get to know the business and the domain. After 2 years, are we still bringing the best level of value to that business, or can we support them in bringing in someone that can kind of take over a lot of the responsibility that we've been dealing with, particularly if they're not striving for growth anymore, they're comfortable with where they're sat. We're not best positioned to support and incubate them anymore, and we're also not the most cost effective. So with that in mind, we tend to say that 2 years is a really good incubation point and a good partnership with us. And our ideal exit is actually the business doesn't need us anymore. There's already been instances where we've supported businesses and they've put a product into the market and it hasn't quite worked. That's naturally an exit for us as well. If the product doesn't exist, then they don't need that CTO support, but they've hopefully found out as quickly as possible, rather than putting it into the market for 2-3 years and finding that actually it wasn't quite the right thing to do, and we've sunk tens of hundreds of thousands of pounds into it.
Yeah, great. I wanted to go to the beginning of your journey then, so how you sort of got into software development, or maybe how you found, I guess, the path and the passion for it. So when was the start?
I'm really, really lucky in terms of what my technical and what my dev story has been per se. I left school at 16 with the aspiration of wanting to be a graphic designer. The only caveat being that I couldn't hand draw, and I just was never able to wield a pencil like I would have liked to. So I left school and enrolled at college, looked at things like graphic design, but also picked up computing at the same time. I very quickly found, though, when I was in school, everyone drives home how important your GCSEs are to your career, and there was this stat that was always thrown around that people with 5 or more GCSEs over the course of their life earned £1 million more than someone who didn't. So I grafted to get my GCSEs and then went to college and found it was exactly the same experience. People were driving home how important your A-levels were, and then I was just thinking, it's probably going to be the same when I go to university. People are going to drive home how important this degree is. And I remember just thinking, I've put the work in to get my GCSEs because I know it's going to impact my job and my life. And I was really just thinking, can I start my life now rather than waiting another 5-6 years to get into industry? And I knew that I couldn't hand draw, so graphic design just didn't work out for me. This was at a point where you didn't need to be in employment or education until you were 18, so I dropped out of college Christmas 2012. And through my own research, found apprenticeships, and I'm a huge ambassador for them because genuinely apprenticeships changed my life. I got started in what was on paper an apprenticeship in social digital media because I was quite interested with how people could sell online and some of the graphics that were associated with that. And I thought, if I can't hand draw, I can at least somewhat to an extent learn how to use Photoshop, and this was kind of pre-Figma. But like Photoshop and InDesign and design graphics there that could be part of something much bigger as part of an advertising campaign. That very quickly turned into kind of understanding like HTML newsletters. So anyone in the Teesside area that got like a spam HTML newsletter around early 2013, it was potentially from me, and I can only apologise. But that kind of introduced me to coding on a really basic level of looking at HTML. From there, very much kind of graduated into websites, and my entire career, I'd like to think, has been a point of natural progression. Looking at websites like WordPress, being able to kind of change the HTML and the CSS behind those, gradually getting more interested in kind of the underlying functions behind that and WordPress plugins. So naturally fell into PHP on the back of that. And just, I remember that point of working with WordPress plugins and thinking this is what I really enjoy doing, and actually solving the problems of I can make this look pretty on the front end, but how do I make it work on a back end as well? And as the business that I was in at the time grew and I'd finished my apprenticeship and stayed on full time as a dev, they pivoted more towards kind of the web-based software, which wasn't always necessarily WordPress, but was PHP. So looking at more kind of software projects, and that was kind of where the kernel of wanting to help people solve their problems and build their ideas really came into play. Worked at that agency for kind of 4 or 5 years to the point where I was a director. Still is one of my biggest achievements to date. I was the director of the firm that gave me my first ever job. There's a huge thank you to Ian Elcourt, who had Tad Web Solutions at the time, because he has been and is an incredible mentor to me. I learned everything on the job, and I learned it through him, and then just kind of took that forward in any way that I could. Left Tad Web Solutions kind of mid-2018 to join the PPC advertising agency Maybo. Joined as their first dev hire and the head of development. They had a really ambitious plan at the time of wanting to build more kind of Google Ads scripts and automate a lot more of the kind of account management work that the team were doing and free up their time on a lot more of the strategy, which I thought was really interesting because it meant every account and every advertiser's got a slightly different problem, whether it's how much they're having to spend on adverts, whether it's the quality of the copy, whether it's how quickly we can build out the campaigns for them if they're a huge retailer. And just building web-based tools that could help the account managers do that a lot more quickly, which kind of expanded the amount of web-based software that I was building, and was my first real exposure of building out a team as well, of recruiting those devs and finding my feet as a manager more than anything. And yeah, kind of taking those on board and taking them under my wing. And that was really the first time that imposter syndrome hit as well, because to date, and I still talk about this now, as a dev, I'm technically unqualified. I don't have a degree in computer science. I've never got any kind of certifications as a dev. Everything I've learned has been on the job. And there's been times where I've had to second guess myself if is this going to be the right approach, or is this just the approach that I know? But that was the kind of first chance of recruiting a team and bringing on people. So we built up that R&D department as a combination of devs and data analysts, and worked under a great tech director called Dean Yates. Really incubated me, but also kind of gave me that freedom to do what I thought was right from a dev perspective, and from building the team and what I thought was right for devs. And I learnt a lot there, spent 4.5 years there, and Maybo kind of at its peak grew to 70 people, and I think they're still growing now, and it's such a great business. That I gradually moved more onto the people management side than the hands-on dev. And really enjoyed it. I loved being a people person as well as being able to kind of take on those problems. And I really enjoyed when Mike Dent came and sat here and talked about his approach to how he deals with a lot more people than tech these days as well. And I really resonated with it.
Yeah.
Was after about 3-4 years at Maybo, I joined a financial services company as their CTO. It was the first CTO they'd had in the business, but they'd had a tech team. And that was really where it was a combination of, they faced some business level problems of being a group that was looking to consolidate. They had existing tech platforms that we needed to plan on sunsetting. we needed to build the new platform and build the team that was going to build that new platform and bring that into the market. And that took me up until 2023, at which point I launched Embeddable because of personal circumstances in my life.
Yeah, no, it's a great journey. I wanted to pick up a little bit on Ian at Tadweb, because I've met Ian a few times. He's a lovely guy, and probably I just wanted to maybe touch on, obviously you progressed quite quickly there to a director level, but I wanted to touch on maybe the light's gone off. Maybe it sat too still. I wanted to touch on like how you felt with maybe the level of trust that he gave you, and what was the main things that you were able to get under his mentorship that allowed you to progress further, and how you felt, I guess, as well, by having that trust.
Well, I spent 5 years at Tadweb Solutions, from being 16 and fresh out of school and literally not knowing anything about the industry. I applied for the social digital media apprenticeship because I thought it sounded interesting, but I was really open with him in that I don't know the industry and I don't fully understand the job. I know what I'm interested in and I know what I want to do. And he took a chance on me. And from day one, it's something that I've learned over time as well. It was 100% that trust was implicit from day one. It wasn't necessarily that it was earned. Trust is there to be lost. And he gave me all of the time that he could between running a small business at the time himself and being able to train me to the point where I could support him initially and then start to take on clients and projects myself. He gave me absolutely everything. And like I say, without him, I wouldn't be in this industry. I'd probably still be trying to learn out hand draw and wouldn't have admitted defeat yet, because I get quite stubborn with stuff like that. It was quite fortunate that I found this apprenticeship that really scratched a different itch, and I still felt like I could apply some of the designer that I wanted to be back then. But a lot of what I apply today, whether it's from a programming perspective, whether it's from how I approach people and business clients, came from the time that I spent with Ian.
Yeah, brilliant. And alongside Ian, then, throughout your career, have you sought out other mentors? I know you mentioned a gentleman at Maybo as well. So do you feel like maybe with every step in your career you've had good mentors along the way that's helped you progress to obviously being where you are today?
Yeah, definitely. What I would say is that every job that I've worked at to date has been in a different industry as well, and I've had to learn that domain, which is where I really see the value now when we get people who are experts in their field and want to solve tech. They're coming in it from the reverse of what I have, where I've had to go and learn their industry to build the product. They know the industry and they need our support in building the product. So with Ian, he was a mentor and still is, because he taught me everything from the beginning. Working at Maybo, working technically under, but I would say alongside, just because of the structure that I had with Dean. Dean was an expert in PPC and advertising, so gave all the time that he could to teach me kind of advertising strategies and understanding Google ads and what was Bing ads and is now Microsoft advertising, so that I could build the best tech and support the dev team in building the best tech for that industry. And the same for when I worked in financial services, being able to have the time to understand the industry was such a key part of onboarding, because otherwise any tech that we built during that time wasn't gonna benefit the business or the clients. So I would say that in every role that I've had, there's been that mentor. What I would say is that I haven't necessarily sought them out. It's conversations that I've been having lately around kind of whether it's mentors and coaches and things like that. I've never actively looked up until now, where I've started to look a little bit more consciously for advice and support in the right places. It's always just kind of naturally happened in that I've came into roles that have been the first of its kind and had to understand the domain and the business. And if people are willing to invest in whatever the salary is for the role, they've got to invest in the person as well. And in those cases, it's been me and helping me understand that domain and that industry, and I'll trickle that down to other tech roles that come into the business as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier about you really enjoy like the people side of things. When did you first get into management? Was it in that initial first role at Tadweb? Yeah,
so during kind of towards the back end of 2017, 2018, Tad went through a bit of growth, and I've been the ambassador for apprenticeships that I got that initial qualification and the experience with no education debt. It was when I spoke to Middlesbrough College and Teesside Uni, and it was just around when was called like an ILM level 5, so it was one of the first kind of degree equivalent apprenticeships came out. It meant that I could get a foundation degree equivalent qualification in management with no education debt and do it with limited hours in a classroom, which was great for me. It gave me some I got the hands-on experience of being a manager at TAD. I got to back that up with a level of qualification through the college as an apprentice again. And got to do it on a small scale, because TAD at its peak was around 5 and 6 people. So not only got to know every person of the team really well, but we were all in a small office, and you've really got to focus on being a people person in that environment as much as everyone wants to crack on and do their own stuff. And there is that cliche of the introverted dev. Everybody's got to kind of get on with each other and be able to approach these problems and approach each other. So that was a really good exposure for me. And then going into that role at Mabel, where it was kind of my responsibility to recruit those devs as well and build out that development team. Again, it was kind of that natural progression. And I've loved being able to speak to people and see their passion and enthusiasm and offer them the opportunity to come in and hone their craft. And some of them have gone on to do incredible things off the back of that as well. And I'll take no credit for it, but it's really nice to know that I've had the chance to work with these people that have gone on to do such amazing things.
Yeah. You've gone like a bit full circle now as well, because your office is back at where TADweb was initially at as well. So you're back in, is it Boho 5?
Yeah, 100%. So TADweb was in Boho 5 for about 3 years, and Mabel were in there for a short while as well when I worked there. But the office that we're in now is over the corridor from TADweb. It is really a full circle. It's quite nostalgic, actually, coming into the office and unlocking the door every morning and knowing that at the end of the corridor where I turn right now to go into our office, I used to just turn left and through this door, and spent many happy years there.
Yeah, they're going to love you, the landlords of that building, aren't they? Because you'll always contribute in there.
That's it. They know that every few years I just reappear. Yeah. It was really nice because some of the people that still manage the building have been there since day one, and it was like I'd not seen them for 4 or 5 years, but every single one of them remembered TAD or remembered us from back then, and it was just nice to know that we obviously left a positive lasting impression. Yeah. It's nice to be back as well.
Oh, good stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about management then. So when it comes to like team culture, how do you tend to like build like a positive team culture within organizations, and obviously within your current organization as well?
Yeah, I think we touched on it previously with how Ian managed me, and it's something that I've always carried forward, is that trust is at 100%, and it's there to be lost. It's not there to be gained, especially with a new hire. Yes, there's kind of certain reservations that you can always have with a new starter, but ultimately my approach is I will trust them implicitly from the beginning, and it's down to their actions that it's lost. And I think immediately that brings a positive culture to it, because they know that they've got freedom, whether that's freedom to do the training when they want, if they want to kind of take some time out and use some. Every dev who joins the Embeddable team gets £1,000 an annual training budget to invest how they like. They could put that into whether it's video courses, going to events, conferences. We'll subsidise that and let them essentially do the training that they see best suits them. Across devs, you get that typical kind of, there's visuals, audios, or kinesthetic learners, and everyone's got a slightly different learning style. It's wrong to kind of push people down one route of just, here's our documentation, or here's a video course that we've already bought, take a look through this. So we give them the trust, we give them the budget to do their own training. Every dev who joins Embeddable, and in the previous roles that I've worked at in companies, we've put this process in that every single person goes through an onboarding project. No matter what kind of level of experience you come in at or what roles you've worked in previously, it's a level playing field. It gives you a chance to kind of demonstrate where your knowledge and ability is at. It gives the rest of the team the chance to kind of take a look at what your knowledge and ability looks like. They might learn something from your approach directly. Every single person comes with a different approach to solving the same problem generally. So we see what that approach is like, whether there's anything that we can learn from it, and vice versa. And it means that by the point of actually coming onto a client product, they've learned our approach to it as well, and we've been able to understand their best working styles. There's the theory of rock stars and superstars when it comes to devs, in that you've got rock stars who just want to get stuff done. Their main gratification is on solving problems. And there's the superstars who get the gratification from sharing the knowledge and seeing other people succeed. And it's making sure that we shape that role around a person and create that culture where people know that we play to their strengths, but we'll also challenge them in some of their weaknesses that will help them identify in the most constructive way, and balance that with, yes, we will support you in what you enjoy doing, and we'll shape that role in making sure that you either get to do predominantly hands-on coding work or predominantly working with other people, but there'll be that counterbalance of, there will be times where you need to work independently, or there'll need to be times where you work in a group, and give everyone the best possible experience, but shaped around their preference.
Yeah. How has the way that your career shaped and the way that, you know, obviously Ian took a chance on you, does that in any way shape, like when you interview candidates or, you know, people that are applying for your company, do you feel like you're always willing to give people a chance, even if they may not have all the knowledge or all the experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been through the process from the other side as well. Like, there's been times where I've gone through like technical recruitment and I've done technical tests and I've been ghosted by recruiters when there's been times out there. I hope my previous employers don't mind. I've looked for jobs before. But I've been through both sides of the process as someone who's looking to recruit a dev, and I've been that dev who's looked at other roles, and I know somewhat what processes work and what doesn't. And ultimately, more so, like particularly when you look at, say, people who are coming into development, and there's a lot of people that are retraining to do that. It's really hard to gauge where their knowledge and experience is, and the main thing that you've got to go off is their enthusiasm, and not necessarily technically how they'd solve a problem, but what their approach might be to it, and making sure that you can understand it and making sure that you make them feel comfortable in how they would tackle it. That there's no value in gaslighting someone into saying, oh, well, we do it this way and you're doing it totally wrong. The main thing that we love to do is see how people approach problems and how they solve them, because ultimately we can learn something from it. Sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, it was just about, you know, giving people a chance. But it's great that you've talked about, I guess, some of the things that you would look for as well. That was going to be like one of the things I was going to ask you about was, well, I'll probably just go into that section actually, which is about like interviews and I like this section of the podcast because it's where I feel like I can give value to sort of junior level developers, mid-level or senior, or people that are looking to change careers. Sorry, not change careers, but like change with it, you know, change to a different company. Because you know, naturally, a lot of people I speak to, you know, there's a lot of interviews involved, and listen to people like Mike and the other guests I've had on the podcast, where from each person I'll be able to get something that I've never used before when speaking to developers about interview preparation. You know, things like, you know, using storytelling, not just relying on your CV. So things like that is stuff that I'd never considered before. You know, even though I've been doing this for, I'd say, like coming up 10 years, it's always good to like learn from the client side, I guess, you know, from what they look for. So you've touched on that, which is good, you know, in terms of like, you know, it doesn't always have to be what you want to do. You know, it's how they can solve a problem. And again, it's always good to be open-minded that, you know, and obviously this can go into like diversity and the different type of people that you may recruit. Everybody can bring their own, you know, their background, their experience is all different. So they may bring a unique way of solving a problem that you've probably never considered yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And ultimately, and the way that I want Embeddable to grow, and what has been a pattern at the businesses that I've worked at, is we've predominantly hired in what would be typically junior positions. At which point you've got to focus on kind of what someone's enthusiasm's like, what their approach to problems are, because they haven't had a chance to build that experience of actually taking that problem head on. But if we can understand their approach, we can't teach problem solving necessarily, but we can teach people how to code. And we can teach them, actually, if they know an approach, we can teach them how to make that happen. And we can support them in becoming a developer. You can't always necessarily support people into becoming a problem solver.
Yeah. No, I think it's really interesting that, you know, there's a lot of different ways in which you can, you know, grow a team and hire input. I think by putting your trust into people who are at the beginning of the career, giving them that chance, I think there then is, you know, quite a lot of like loyalty, or a lot of, you know, they really buy into what the company is trying to do. And you know, I think you know, Keith, when I was speaking to Keith in an episode, he was talking about having that energy at the start of your career. And you know, when you've got that energy to you know, you'll be wanting to do more. You want to make, obviously, you know, you want to make an impression. I guess anytime you join a new company, it's always the same. You know, I speak to a lot of devs when I place them in a new company, and it's always about, you know, when you're first there might be a little bit of imposter syndrome. There might be a little bit of, you know, have I earned the right to work here? And then obviously then being able to demonstrate the value that you can bring as well. Yeah,
100%. And especially at a junior point in your career, it's that capacity for growth as well. Like the world is quite genuinely your oyster. If you're coming in from a junior level of experience, you've got all of those potentials to look forward to of all of the learning, all of the projects that you can be involved in, all of the different facets that you can learn, and really kind of see which direction your career wants to go in. It's much easier to pivot. Say if you start off life as a dev, but find that you've got a real inclination for data, it's much easier to pivot towards more of that data analyst route. You might enjoy being a dev, but also enjoy front end and focus on becoming full stack. You get that exposure to really work out what your career can be. Whereas if you've been doing it 5 and 10 years, it's much harder to kind of reshape that, because you've built up that CV and you've accumulated that experience where you kind of find yourself forced in applying for roles that, as much as they're different employers, have a similar focus to what you've been doing. So it's the main focus for us as recruiting juniors is giving them the opportunity and exposure to all of the different facets of tech, not just necessarily dev. So whether that is things like looking at data, there's a huge emphasis on AI at the moment, so really digging into some of the concepts in there and being able to take that forward. And it comes back to no matter who joins Embeddable or the previous companies that I've worked at, we've always had that onboarding project to level the playing field. It is an opportunity for people to showcase what they know. It's also a safe space to go and break things. If you want to attempt something new, or you kind of go backwards and take a look at our code base and see that we've applied something, try and bring it into your own project and see if you can understand it. And to be fair, if you can't understand it, we probably need to do some refactoring and make it simpler anyway, or document it better so that people can reverse engineer it. So there's things that we can learn from how people approach an onboarding project that reflects on us more than the person who's actually carrying it out as well. I think, especially kind of recruiting for juniors, the main thing is just giving them that exposure to as much as possible. And the very best thing that I did was start my career in a micro business, because beyond being an apprentice, beyond becoming a developer, I learned so much about a business as a whole. And I know for a fact my entrepreneurial spirit wouldn't be here now if I started off somewhere big as a cohort of, say, 20 or 30 new hires. I got to learn about so much more beyond the qualifications and the development, whether that was kind of understanding the finances behind a business, being able to get involved in recruitment from an early stage, being able to be directly involved with clients and stakeholders. There was so many opportunities that I got from being the junior or the apprentice in a small business that I just wouldn't have got somewhere like a conglomerate or a 1,000-person company.
Yeah, no, I've got a really similar journey. I mean, I started off at a conglomerate and was, just, a recruiter in a much bigger company, but I've always, from young really had like the ambition of like owning my own company. But it wasn't until I started working for a smaller company where I got exposure to a lot of that as well. Right, okay, so I'm working quite closely with the business owner, getting an understanding of, finances, marketing, and just getting an overall picture of that was really useful. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think, if any developers who are starting off do have that sort of, burning desire to one day, like, have their own company or start something, then, I'd probably recommend trying to find a micro company or company where, you can learn from the owners or the main people that are driving that business forward, because you will learn a lot more. I find that maybe the microscope's a lot bigger in maybe smaller companies as well, because obviously there's less of you. So, but then at the same time, it's good because you need to be in an environment where, it's okay to make mistakes. So everyone make mistakes, even, the owners of businesses make mistakes. So it's about, learning from them. Whereas sometimes a bigger organisation, you might just have a small section of work, so you won't get exposure to the clients, things inevitably always, there's always challenges, things can go wrong. So it's great to get that exposure. So yeah, I think, I'm with you on that regarding, working for a small organisation and then building it from there.
Yeah, and I remember having the really frank conversation with Ian when I was maybe about 18 months into my journey as a developer, and he just asked me like what my long-term career aspirations were. It wasn't a trick question. He wasn't trying to get me to say I'm going to work here forever. But having been that dev for 12, 18 months, I had that aspiration of wanting to work somewhere big, and at the time I wanted to work for Microsoft. Having kind of seen a lot of the tech that they built over time, it was just when I was starting to really learn a little bit about open source and what was getting involved there. I wanted to work at Microsoft and ultimately be that small cog in a big machine. And that's not to say that small cogs don't play a significant part. All it takes is one small cog to break for an entire engine to fall over. Yeah. But having actually worked with Ian and being a small business and getting all of that exposure, it really is beneficial more so to me now, because when I work with business owners or people who are looking to launch their own startups or explore their ideas, I really resonate with some of the problems that they're facing or the emotions that they're facing when they tackle this problem. We used to get really excited at TAD when clients came in because we got invested in their product and their projects, and this was a new problem for us to tackle. And it's that same feeling now when we work with a new client who's got an idea to revolutionise an industry. we get really invested because actually, like you say, it's really exciting. And if we are taking on projects that aren't exciting because we feel like we have to, ultimately we've failed as a business in what we set out to do. And it's just making sure that we retain that excitement that essentially we all want to feel like junior developers getting their first crack at a project in a new industry. And if that excitement's not there, we're doing something wrong.
Yeah. So I know you recently took on your first hire. I wanted to, so I ask all the guests, when they're interviewing, what are some of the sort of common like pitfalls they see, or what sort of things do, I guess essentially, can go against a candidate if they're, in interview and applying for your role. So what would you say some of the pitfalls are, or sort of common mistakes you might see candidates doing that they can, maybe improve on?
It's not necessarily a mistake, but the main thing that we'll see is as part of any interview, it can't be helped but dependent, and I think this is on the employer as well, in the way you structure an interview, from the setting to the way that you've structured out the job advert in the first place, can very much dictate the tone and how that interview feels to a person. What if you've got a really quite heavily worded job description or is really technically focused, people will approach that interview and try and be as technical and very direct as they can be. They won't kind of go off on tangents. They won't feel very personable. They'll try and stick to the robotic because you've worded the job advert like it was built for a robot. So the first thing that we've always done in every job ad that I've written is I've tried to write it from a human's approach. There's no chat GPT here, but I've tried to write it in such a way so as informal as possible, because it shows the human side of us, and it means that people approach the interview with a human in mind. They know that they're meeting with me. We've been really clear kind of on what the dress code is, what we'll be talking about. It's not necessarily all to talk about the role, but the main pitfall that I see is because of the way that adverts are structured, people will come in and purely talk tech. They won't share any of kind of their background, what gets them excited outside of work. Ultimately, a lot of us work to live, and we've got to enjoy that time when we're here, and we want a job that we enjoy. So the least that we can do is be human about it and get to know each other on a human level, rather than just a tick box criteria of I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. I always want to know what makes people tick and what they enjoy kind of outside of work. For a lot of people, that is still doing dev, but it's right. Well, what do you do as a developer on your own? Do you have side projects? Do you look at certain things? Kind of where does your excitement come from?
Yeah. Now, how important do you think continuous learning is for developers? And could you touch on maybe some of the ways in which you throughout your career you picked up and learned things and what worked for you?
Yeah, continuous learning's key, and I think that should come naturally. If your business is taking on projects or you're working on a system that is continuously growing, there'll be different features or different focuses that allow you to learn, whether it's learning the problem that it solves, learning why this idea might be beneficial, or the client that it serves, or the team that can save time from it. You learn kind of the business case for it and the benefits from it, but also it's an opportunity to try new technical approaches in certain instances. If you've got patterns that you've got to follow, you're a little bit more constrained, but there's always that opportunity to apply something differently or go back and refactor. Continuous learning in an ideal, like I say, it happens subconsciously, whether that's taking on a feature, whether that is, if you've got a team that's big enough, being able to do pair programming sessions that where you bounce around the team and everyone gets involved, or different people take the lead on certain areas. What we did really well when I worked at Verve was different devs took responsibility for different areas of a monolith system. So they were responsible for core features. It meant that they didn't just hold all the knowledge because we documented all of it. But if we had a question or if something did inevitably go wrong, the whole team were able to pick it up and work with that dev to solve the problem, fix the bug, expand the feature. But it was also an opportunity of continuous learning because they were learning new elements of the system. They were learning why it was beneficial to the platform, beneficial to the business. But it also meant that if they did pick up something new, they'd learn through doing, which a lot of devs will agree. Learning through doing is the best way to learn because you're getting to apply it rather than just understanding the theory of it as well.
Yeah, great. And so most recently, we had the Tees Tech Awards, and you managed to bag a couple of awards. So how was that for you to get recognised and for the work that you've been doing in the area?
No, it was unbelievable. The Tees Tech Awards in particular is one that I'm really passionate about. It was in its 5th year, and I remember Maybo's had at least one winner there. We had a winner there when I worked at the Verve Group. So it was one that I've worked in 2 businesses that have won at the Tech Awards and had shortlists. One of the big things for me was, again, kind of fueled by imposter syndrome. I want my business to be able to stand on its own 2 feet. If we can get a shortlist at these same awards, then we're doing something right. And knowing especially how good tech businesses and a lot of the up-and-coming tech businesses that come out of the university or people that decide Teesside's a great place to get started, there's a lot of competition's not the right word because everybody's friendly. There's a lot of opportunities to collaborate there, but there's so many that could compete for those shortlists and for those awards. For us to be able to win in any category was huge and really still it validates what we're doing. I'll be the first to say that when I launched Embeddable, I launched it with no kind of prior client book, no prior contract or anything like that. It was fully bootstrapped, and I was essentially putting my finger in the air and thinking, right, this is the right thing to do. And we learned some of that through working with clients really early on. So to be able to 12 months down the line get some award shortlists and be recognised for some of the work that we've done and seeing clients get shortlisted for works that we've been involved in was the biggest validation we've probably had so far.
Yeah, no, it's great. Like you said, in that short amount of time, you've been able to make an impact, and it's great to be recognised. So hopefully that long may it continue. I love to see like local success stories in Teesside, and you're right. There's a really good hub and support network around Teesside where everyone wants everyone to win. So yeah, it's really good to see. So what does the future hold for Embeddable? So I know short term you've just made your first hire, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
What would you like to do in the future?
When I launched Embeddable, again, I had a very rough idea of what growth looks like. For context, when we started, the kind of birth of Embeddable came from my daughter being born and knowing that I was never realistically going to get the chance to start a business again, taking all of that responsibility of a newborn at home. And it sounds crazy at first to say, my daughter's just been born, I'm going to quit secure income and start a business. But my theory was we weren't going to have a big Christmas that year, we weren't going to go on holiday. What better time to kind of invest our life savings? And thankfully my partner was on board with it, that I put my notice in and took that forward. And the first year was very much we will either sink or swim. The setup that we've got, which is that blend of consultancy and development, is somewhat unique to Teesside. There's a lot of really good dev houses and really great agencies that offer development. They don't quite offer the consultancy in the same structure that we do. And it means that we work really well with those agencies because we can either kind of work with them on discovery and scoping, we can augment them on dev if they've taken on a large project and they need support. So those agencies are our partners, but we've got a slightly unique offering that makes us really valuable to businesses wanting to solve problems and those dev agencies that have taken on projects. So that first year was just validating that actually I had this belief it could work and seeing if it did. And we ended year one with those shortlists for the Tees Tech Awards, which was the real validator that we've made enough money to sustain year one. We've got some shortlists off the back of the work we've done. Year two was really where I want to put my imposter syndrome it didn't vanish, but it suppressed that for a little while because we're obviously doing something right with the clients that we're working with and what we're outputting. So year two was very much, which started on the 1st of April, it was, right, I'm going to put my foot down now and I want to make this work. I want to make this work at scale. So we put the advert out to recruit for the first dev, wanting to do that in stages. So we've brought on the first junior developer in Leo, who joined us at the 1st of June, doing an incredible job so far and has already gone through our onboarding project to kind of learn the ropes, came from an entirely different tech background, but has been able to pick up our stack and I've learnt things from him already as well. He's now on to his first client project that we're working together on. In terms of kind of continued growth, I always want Embeddable to be a small business, kind of 6-7 people, I think is the sweet spot, because we don't want to go into competition with dev agencies. For one, we want to support them. We don't want to be competing directly on client products. We want to continue to support them. We also need to stick to our North Star of taking on the projects that are the most ambitious and the ones that we believe can make the most impact, not necessarily the ones that pay the most. And the bigger we grow, the bigger that need is to take on work because you need to. And I think 6 or 7 is kind of the ideal. If you had a dev team, it's kind of around your ideal dev team size if you worked in Agile.
Yeah.
We can still be really agile and reactive, but also bring value to a number of clients, whether that's as a dev, whether that's through fractional and consultancy, but also be a profitable business from our perspective as well. And the goal for the next few years is working towards that North Star of incubating people and supporting more ambitious people and bringing their ideas to market, supporting those growing businesses in going to the next step and raising investment and ultimately getting an exit.
Yeah, I mean, they say there's never a best time to start a business. You know, there just never is. So, you know, the fact that you've done it when you know you've had a baby is commendable, because you know there's a lot of stress, a lot of sleepless nights anyway, and then you've got the added stress of starting the business as well. So well done with that. With imposter syndrome as well, it's funny because yeah, you know, I still get it a lot of the time, but one thing that helps you sort of cope with it is that you only ever get imposter syndrome when you're sort of, you know, I guess people say that you're doing well or you're getting some success. You know, you never ever feel like you're an imposter when things are a bit challenging or tough. It's always when you're exceeding what you feel like you could be doing, and then it's like, hold on, actually, you know, what's going on here? And that's where the imposter syndrome kicks in. So what helps me is, no, you know, you must be doing something right to be getting imposter syndrome. So like push through.
100%. One thing that I've learned very much so over the last year is if something scares me, it's probably the right thing to do, because taking the commitment to move into office space, taking the commitment to make that first hire, much like starting the business, there's never a perfect time for it, but there's times that are better than others, and there's times that make sense, at least in my head. And it's those times where imposter syndrome kicks in, because I'm naturally quite a risk-averse person, and anyone who knows me will know that I'll second-guess myself to the end. But being able to kind of understand, right, well, that there is this feeling here that it may not be the right time, but it also might be, and ultimately, I don't want to live with that what if, and very much kind of what I set out to do at the start of the year. One thing that I've always enjoyed doing, and one thing that has always gave me imposter syndrome, but I can take total control of, is public speaking and getting involved in events, because nothing gives me imposter syndrome more than talking tech to a room full of techies, because every single one has got experience. Some have been in it a lot longer than me. They've got different approaches, and every single one of them in their mind is entitled to think, what is this guy talking about? And ultimately what I've learned is that's fine. People have got different approaches to things. But I try to read a lot of psychology, and one thing that I do get really interested in is like a method of immersion therapy. So what I can do to tackle my imposter syndrome is essentially suppress it by proving it wrong. So I set out at the start of this year to get involved in as many kind of events and speaking opportunities as I could. It doesn't matter whether there's one person there, no people there, or 1,000 people there. If there's the opportunity, I'll get involved, and I'll talk about tech, I'll talk about Embeddable, I'll listen to people's problems and their business pitches. As long as I can get involved and actually say, right, well, I've brought something valuable to this conversation, my imposter syndrome can't talk back, essentially, because I know that I've done something of value.
Yeah, well, the chat's been great today, so yeah, I think you're battling it well.
Oh,
so,
thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you, Peter. Thanks for your time today. And,
No, thank you very much.
Really enjoyed the chat.
Well, thanks, Kaz.